EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
I'm Monse Alvarado. Welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly.
Because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that.
The freedom to make decisions about one's own body should not be made by the government.
Presidential candidates Donald Trump and Kamala Harris go head-to-head in their first debate.
She said that Roe didn't support abortion in the 7th, 8th, 9th month. That's factually false.
Well, I think it's really important for both Trump and Vance to clarify their position on this issue.
Highlights and analysis of the face-off and the key takeaways.
I'm hopeful because if we get that message out, we're going to win come November.
And boots on the ground in Montana. How the Catholic Conference is talking to voters about a ballot measure that could enshrine abortion in the state constitution.
And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
As far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Harris and Trump face off in their first debate, each taking on abortion and IVF. It was the first time the two met in person, and it began with a bit of an awkward handshake offered by Harris when each candidate walked on stage. The two candidates shared contrasting views of America now and the America they hope to build if they're elected. With just 8 weeks before the election and final ballots are cast, this debate may have been a critical moment for undecided voters seeking to better understand where each candidate stands on the issues. The top 3 issues leading the debate: the economy, abortion, and immigration. The main takeaways on abortion: Vice President Kamala Harris wants to legalize abortion with no limits at a federal level. Former President Donald Trump mentions that third trimester abortions are radical, but he has not issued a gestational limit he would support. Most recently, he wavered on his vote in Florida, initially to extend a 6-week limit and then retracting that statement, offering his support. He has said there should be exceptions for rape and incest. During the debate, Kamala Harris even brought religion into her argument in support of abortion. Let's take a listen.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
Harris claimed if Donald Trump is elected that in vitro fertilization access would be in danger. Trump has openly supported IVF, recently saying he would have federal funding for the procedure. As we know, in vitro fertilization is not supported by the teachings of the Catholic Church.
I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader.
Tim Carney, senior political columnist at the Washington Examiner and senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, joins us alongside Alexandra DeSanctis, fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, to weigh in on this debate. Thank you both for joining us. Throughout the debate, there were somewhat heated exchanges. At one point, Harris scoffed at the idea that late-term abortions would even occur, and the two sparred over the issue. We've put those moments together for you to hear. Let's take a listen.
Nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening.
Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia.
Now, former President Trump there is doing the fact-checking for the moderators. They were missing many that night, one in reference to late-term abortions, as we just heard. And that reference Trump made to the governor of Virginia was accurate. We have the tape of it from 2019 when Governor Northam, a pediatric neurosurgeon, was discussing cases where a baby may have severe deformities. Let's take a listen to that.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
Alexandra, your thoughts on this part of the debate?
Well, I think there's a lot of confusion about this issue, and interestingly, President Trump was right that the moderators would not ask Harris whether she would support abortion after that point. She was insisting this never happens. In fact, we know that abortion does happen later in pregnancy. It's certainly not the most common time that abortion happens, but it does happen. There are plenty of states where it's allowed, and Harris herself, had she been asked the question, certainly would have said, yes, I would allow it through all 9 months. That's been her stance as long as she's been a politician. I think that's what, of course, viewers ought to have taken away, but couldn't because of the lack of questioning.
Well, we're glad to clarify it here. Tim, let's go to you on the issue of words, word choice, word use. There were several times when Vice President Harris was discussing abortion, but used the words healthcare instead. Is this typical of pro-abortion candidates, or is this shift in language a move towards the center without actually having to change her policies?
It's interesting because about 4 years ago, the other side, the pro-choice side, stopped calling themselves pro-choice. Remember, they started saying, well, no, that's an outdated term. They started, more of the shout your abortion. And I think 2019 through 2022 was sort of the peak of them believing that the left was just taking over the culture. And Kamala Harris's entire campaign has been about sort of moving to the center. But abortion is a tricky issue for them. They feel they cannot, even ones who would want to, cannot give an inch to say in the 9th month, I would not allow an abortion of a perfectly healthy baby, or even to say that abortion in that case is morally wrong. They can't go there. They're held captive by the abortion lobby, and they can't compromise at all. So it would be a perfect place for Trump to point out what he's pointing out, that 7th month, 8th month abortions happen and they're legal, and that Democrats defend them, because Democrats want to move to the middle, but their abortion lobby, which is a huge part of their funding base, won't allow that.
Well, Kamala Harris herself is someone who has walked into abortion clinics. She did that for the first time as a vice president ever in the history of the United States, had a vice president walked into and supported a Planned Parenthood center. Your reaction to that and this flip-flop on the language, trying to show compassion for women who would be offended by the idea that late-term abortion would even exist?
Well, I mean, so Kamala was very careful in her words there. She said nobody goes to term, no mother. So at a 40-week abortion, we don't have evidence of that happening. But as Alexandra said earlier, certainly what Trump was talking about in the 7th and 8th month on healthy babies, abortionist Warren Hearn has said he's done one just in that late in the pregnancy when the baby was fully viable, just for sex selection, okay? Because the baby wanted a mom, or the mom wanted a girl, or wanted a baby boy. And so Kamala was very careful on that sort of indignant response to say, well, it just doesn't happen. And the obvious comeback then is, well, and she said that Roe didn't support abortion in the 7th, 8th, 9th month. That's factually false. But the way to test it is say, okay, fine, let's start by passing a bill banning abortion after 6 months. It wouldn't do that much for ending abortions, but it would do a lot to show that the Democrats are extremists in defense of abortion.
Well, we certainly know that they are. We've seen this on this campaign. Alexandra, you write about public policy for children and mothers and families often. Has either party clarified what they would do for families and how they would pay for it?
No, I mean, I think this is something that some Republican politicians have tried to gesture towards. Certainly, very robust paid family leave is something that Democrats have wanted for a long time. It was, fully bankrolled by the federal government. Republicans have tried to be a little bit more creative about, drawing Social Security money forward, for example, and using it when you have a child born, or expanding the child tax credit, things like that. So I think both parties have gestured towards that. But I don't think either party is really correct well, certainly the Democrats are not, but even the Republicans, I don't think have done a very good job of thinking through how that's really connected to the abortion issue. And I think, unfortunately, as important as it is to support mothers and families and children after they're born, most women are not getting abortions because they can't afford diapers or can't take enough time off work. That's really not the reality of the situation.
Well, Tim, in your article in the Examiner titled "What's Not to Love About IVF," moving into this very hotly contested issue, you call the process abortion, but outside of the mother's room. I thought that was really precise and important language. And we heard Trump's comments earlier about being a leader on IVF. Harris also vigorously supports IVF. Can you weigh in on this debate?
Yeah, I think Donald Trump is trying to defuse the issue of IVF, and he's making a big mistake by doing this full-fledged embrace of it. Rather than just say, look, we're not going to touch it at the federal government, he goes ahead and he says the federal government should subsidize it or should force insurers to cover it, basically force every single person to pay for IVF insurance, even Catholics who find it immoral. That's a mistake. It's a mistake because it further adopts this, what I call a bad anthropology, this view that we are the sole authors of our own life, that autonomy is the one good, and that the one good in life, and a rejection of the connection between marriage, love, sex, family formation, pregnancy. All those things are connected naturally, and IVF, the thinking behind it, regardless of the intentions of the parents who just desperately want a kid, the whole philosophy around it is a different one, and it's one that dissolves all of these bonds. And so Trump, by trying to make the Republicans a pro-IVF party, I think is making a mistake adopting an anthropology which ultimately doesn't go hand in hand with family values in the pro-life position.
An important distinction to make, and one that I think both parties really need to reflect on. Well, I will give you the last word, Alexandra. On October 1st, the vice presidents will face off. J.D. Vance continues to support a national ban on abortion. Tim Walz supports abortion and gender transitions for children. They are complete opposites on the life issue. How does that, or should that, impact voters?
Well, I think it's really important for both Trump and Vance to clarify their position on this issue. I think there's been a lot of lack of clarity from the Republican Party, from both the candidates, on whether they actually would vote or rather, sign an abortion ban into law. I think there's a lack of clarity about whether the party is really in favor of protecting unborn children at the national level, or whether the party would prefer to let it be a states' rights issue. I think that would be a mistake to punt this to the states. We really have to have eventually a national solution. A house divided against itself cannot stand, as Lincoln said. And on this issue, it's too fundamental of a right. All our other rights come from the right to life. So I think that debate would be an important time for J.D. Vance to clarify, where is the Republican Party? Where is this ticket on this issue? And is there really a big contrast with the Democrats? Or is it simply a kind of slightly more pro-life version?
And on the issue of gender transitions?
Oh, I certainly think that ought to be talked about. That ought to be highlighted, because an incoming pro-life administration and strong administration on that issue would be a major win for Americans. And the contrast could not be clearer between the parties on that.
Well, we're grateful for your analysis, Tim and Alexandra, and we look forward to seeing more of your commentary. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The National Catholic Register is also covering the presidential debate. Log on to ncregister.com for in-depth analysis. And don't forget to take a look at the EWTN News and Real Clear Opinion research poll at EWTNnews.com/poll. Find out what the outlook is on the Catholic vote, and find exclusive coverage of the 2024 election from a Catholic perspective. Turning now to our coverage of state ballot initiatives, we focus this week on Montana. Currently, abortion is legal in Montana until viability, when a baby can survive outside the womb, which is about 24 weeks. The ballot measure would lock in abortion as a right until fetal viability and allow it after that time period if the woman's life or health is at risk. Bishops released a statement through the Montana Catholic Conference warning Catholics that the Constitutional Initiative 128 would legalize late-term abortions of babies who feel pain, abortion of babies who have been partially delivered, and abortion by dismemberment. Matt Brower, director of the Montana Catholic Conference, speaks with us now from Helena, Montana, to talk about work to get the pro-life message out. Matt, welcome to the show. I've seen the quick reference document that you gave us that breaks down this amendment. Are you handing these out at parishes?
Some parishes are, but actually we've gone a step beyond. The bishops in Montana decided that this is such an important issue, and it's so essential that we get the word out regarding this amendment, that they have taken to mailing this fact sheet along with their statement and the entire text of the amendment to every Catholic household in the state. So we've tried to get those in the hands of every single person that's in our pews, those who are going to be voting or not, just to know what this actually is and what's at stake.
And how else have you been combating the lies or misinformation that's coming out of the campaign surrounding the abortion ballot amendment?
Well, a lot of this has been done internally to this point. Throughout the signature gathering process, we've really focused on addressing this communication within our parishes. But we're reaching a point where, because this has been approved for the ballot, the bishops are interested in moving that message beyond the four walls of the church. So we're going to be pushing out various bits of communication via social media, and other communication means, so that we can get that word out. So we're moving beyond the four walls into broader communities. So whether that ends up looking like billboards or yard signs or digital ads, we'd really like to be able to produce and distribute some digital ads, in addition to using our kind of organic communications means that we have through the two dioceses and through the conference.
Well, now, Montana Governor Greg Gianforte has signed multiple pro-life bills into law in the state, including one that forbids the use of taxpayer dollars to fund elective abortions, and another that protects babies born alive following botched abortions, as well as restrictions on dismemberment abortion of babies, and other bills that protect doctors' and nurses' rights of conscience not to perform abortions. Are these laws, all of these great pro-life protections, are they in danger if this ballot passes?
I think virtually any regulation regarding abortion is in danger if this passes. And the reason being that it writes into our Constitution a standard of judicial review for post-viability abortion that really opens the door to that. And it doesn't restrict that then just to situations where health is involved. Because even though that's what the amendment, they try to convey, that this is only going to be for pre-viability abortions, the reality is the standard that one would have to meet to uphold a restriction post-viability is so outrageous that this will allow abortion through all 9 months, and we're convinced of that.
Now, tell us about the pro-life movement in Montana. Obviously, you've been able to pass some really significant pro-life protections, but now you've got a shift where you have all of those, as you just mentioned, in danger, as well as a potential legalization of abortion. What is going on there?
Well, I think what we find is that a lot of these various pro-life groups around the state are kind of rallying to the cause. They're aware of what's going on, and we've kind of reached this tipping point where there's been this sense of we're trying to make progress, move forward with legislation, finally getting to a point where we can pass some good pro-life legislation that's facing court challenge time after time. We are hopeful that some of these things may be able to withstand that challenge, but should this amendment pass, it'll make that almost impossible. So it's great to see some of the pro-life groups and individuals across our state kind of pulling together. I've never seen an effort that has united just in the Catholic community, Catholics across our state, the way this has over the last 4 months or so. And that's really due to the leadership of the bishops and their sense that this is a time that we can't afford to not be engaged. And so they've made that clarion call for people to step forward. So it's actually a moment of evangelization. It's been a wonderful thing to see.
Well, that's certainly important. One last quick question. Are you optimistic that you'll be able to protect life?
I am, and the reason being, when we've kind of tested the message here, and when we've been able to explain to people what this amendment will do, then they're almost across the board questioning whether or not this is really something Montana needs. They see all this out-of-state funding. They understand that most people don't want late-term abortion. Most people don't want parents cut out of the process of even being notified when their minor child has an abortion or is seeking one. So that message, the truth of what this does, resonates with the people across our state. I'm hopeful because if we get that message out, we're going to win come November.
Well, we'll be watching that carefully and praying for your success. It would be a turning of the tide for these abortion amendments around the country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
After some legal ping pong, Missouri's state Supreme Court ruled on Tuesday that an abortion measure that could reverse strong pro-life protections in the state will be on the state's ballot in November. The measure would enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution. Missouri law currently protects unborn babies throughout all pregnancy, with exception of medical emergencies. Pro-life advocates argued in court that the ballot language violates state law and misleads voters about which laws would be repealed. The Missouri Catholic Conference released a response following Tuesday's ruling, saying in part, Amendment 3 is an extreme constitutional amendment that legalizes abortion at any stage of pregnancy with no protections for the preborn child, even when the child is capable of feeling pain. The Missouri Catholic Conference will be working to inform the public about this deceptively worded amendment. We urge all Missourians of goodwill to stand for the health and safety of women and their preborn children and oppose Amendment 3. We'll have more on the Missouri ballot in the coming weeks, and don't forget to check out the Catholic News Agency's interactive map on state abortion ballots. Head over to catholicnewsagency.com and scroll to the bottom. When we return, international leaders gather in Washington, D.C. to affirm protection for women, families, and the unborn. Plus, we tell you about a relay race across the United States spreading the pro-life message.
Hello, family. I certainly don't need to tell you that we're living in an extremely difficult and challenging moment. Our country, our world, is witnessing a spiritual battle that seeks to undermine fundamental truths, threaten religious freedom, and sow confusion. At the same time, all of us have seen the costs of the basic necessities of life, like groceries, medicines, housing, and utilities, increase exponentially. Faced with higher prices, most people are cutting back on extras. Times are tight. EWTN is not immune to these pressures either. Many years ago, one of the great lessons I learned from Mother Angelica was to always trust in God's providence. Throughout these last 40 years, it's been you, our EWTN family, who have sustained us in good times and in tough times. It is you who are the manifestation of God's providence. I know that there's a lot of anxiety about the state of the world, about the upcoming election, and what the future may bring. But this is exactly the time when EWTN has to push ahead and to do what we were created to do. I ask that you please support EWTN financially. If you have benefited from our programming but have never donated to us, or maybe you haven't made a gift to EWTN recently, please do so now. Or perhaps you might consider making an additional gift at this time. It is only with your help that we can continue to proclaim the eternal word, Jesus Christ. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Help bring clarity to a chaotic world. Please give a gift today at EWTN.com/donate or call 1-800-447-EWTN or send your donation to EWTN, 5817 Old Leeds Road, Irondale, Alabama, 35210.
Pope Francis's Southeast Asia apostolic journey is wrapping up on Friday, September 13th. He landed in Singapore on Wednesday after leaving East Timor, where he thanked children for their example and for, quote, teaching us how we should let ourselves be cared for by God. He said the youth and the smiles of those in East Timor touched his heart. This 12-day journey is the longest of Francis's pontificate. In Quito, Ecuador, the International Eucharistic Congress kicked off on September 8th. Priests, bishops, religious, and laity came together to bear witness to the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. During the more than week-long event, the defense of the unborn was brought to the attention of the faithful. Bishop José Mumil of Spain shared that abortion is unnatural and is a reflection of what happens when we remove God from our lives. EWTN has daily coverage and commentary from Quito as the designated official channel of the 2024 International Eucharistic Congress. Be sure to tune in for your front row seat of this beautiful event. On Tuesday, more than 40 countries were represented on Capitol Hill for the 4th annual Geneva Consensus Declaration Summit held by the Institute of Women's Health. The declaration is the first ever strategic global coalition aiming to protect women's health, families, and life at all stages. International leaders, including ministers from Uganda and the ambassador of Egypt, joined several U.S. lawmakers in reaffirming the declaration's core values throughout the presentation. Those values include defending the family as foundational to the health of society, asserting there is no international right to abortion, and a nation's freedom to support women and families through national policy and legislation. Some leaders tell EWTN Pro-Life Weekly that they receive global pressure to legalize abortion and accept other controversial ideologies.
Uganda believes in partnerships, but we believe in partners who respect our sovereignty, and respect our cultures and our traditions, not partners that come to push it down our throats that we should do what they believe in. Support me to do what I believe in and to help me to grow along those lines.
Valerie Huber, president of the Institute of Women's Health, joyfully told us that this year 2 more countries joined the CGD, the Republic of Chad and Burundi. We'll have more on this story, including reaction from U.S. lawmakers on our broadcast next week. This week and over the last weekend, runners in San Francisco, New York, and Austin stepped off for the annual Life Runners Relay. In San Francisco, they began by praying outside of a Planned Parenthood with Archbishop Cordileone leading the prayer. In New York, after a rosary at Planned Parenthood, they gathered in Times Square as a public witness to life. There are more than 1,400 legs of this relay that will continue until October 19th. The races will shape across over the nation, ending in Overland Park, Kansas. Runners in Fargo will begin their journey on the 14th. And that does it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless you. But before we leave, we want to take a moment to recognize a tragic moment in our country's history. This week marks the 23rd anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks. The attacks took the lives of nearly 3,000 people at the World Trade Center in New York City, the Pentagon in Arlington, and on board Flight 93 in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. These souls are gone, but they're not forgotten. They were remembered in services at the attack sites on Wednesday. May they rest in peace.
The holy reminder of the week is this genuine gemstone St. Nicholas Rosary bracelet. Each of our handmade rosary bracelets are designed to tell a story of a saint or devotion. An explanatory booklet is included. Order today at EWTNRC.com, item number 76932. Or you can call 1-800-854-6316.
O Jesus, who because of your burning love for us, willed to be crucified and to shed your most precious blood for the redemption and salvation of our souls, look down upon us and grant the petition we ask for. We trust completely in your mercy. Cleanse us from sin by your grace. Sanctify our work. Give us and all those who are dear to us our daily bread. Lighten the burden of our sufferings, and grant to the nation so sorely afflicted your peace, which is the only true peace, so that by obeying your commandments we may all come at last to the glory of heaven.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Hi, I'm Ryan Penny, and welcome to The Catholic Sphere. This week, we are joined once again by our panelist of influencers to tell us how they are catechizing on social media. First, we have with us Alex Jurado, also known as the voice of reason across platforms. He joins us from New Mexico. And up next is Desiree Cifuentes, also known online as the Uncatechized Catholic. And she's with us today from Arizona. And finally, we have Taylor Engel, the mastermind behind the Catechism guy. Collectively, they have over 200,000 followers on social media. Alex, we want to start with you today. How do you see the dumbing down of the faith affecting men in particular?
It turns out that we, just as people, aren't very good at doing things in a measured way, and we tend to take things to extremes. So when they tried to dumb down the faith a little bit so that the average layperson could understand it, they took it all the way and they dumbed it down completely. And now today we're seeing the effects of that, particularly with men. With men don't think that the faith is something credible, just intellectually speaking. So I think about Bishop Robert Barron. Bishop Robert Barron, he tells a story that once he went back home to Chicago to visit his family, and that I believe it was his niece was also home from university, and that he saw all of the books all of her school books, all of the books that she brought home with her. And he described seeing a stack of books, and all of the different books that she had, all of the different topics, all of the different subjects were these big, thick tomes, big, meaty, sophisticated textbooks. But when he got to the book that was supposed to be for a religious studies class, it was a comic book. So in universities, for classes that are about the study of religion, they're giving out comic books as reading material. And that is a great antidote as to the problem, the problem that we have here, especially in this country, where we have no problem whatsoever keeping everything else sophisticated and presenting it as is, but we feel like religion needs to be dumbed down so much. Maybe it's because they think that that's what it is. Maybe it's because they think that, it's so complicated that the only way anybody can ever understand it is if it's in comic book form. But whatever it is, whatever the reason is, the fact of the matter is that the result has been detrimental to men, especially in the Western world, where we have forgotten that everything that we have, the reason that we have all of those, the reason that we can have all of those big, thick textbooks for all of the other disciplines and all of the other fields of study, the reason that we have those is because of the church. Without the Catholic Church, we wouldn't have any of those things either. So we've gotten things severely backwards, and we need to make a change, because we're seeing the effects of it in our culture today.
Yeah, we need to restore the balance, and you're definitely helping to do that, which might explain part of the reason why 62% of your audience is a male audience, which is hard to achieve these days. So, Desiree, you cover everything from motherhood and marriage to brown scapulars and limbo. How do you decide what to post about?
So about half of my posts are things that just sort of organically flow from my life, whether it's a book that I'm reading or a conversation that I had with somebody. And the other 50% are essentially ex nihilo. They just come out of nowhere and are placed into my brain. And I've realized, okay, I could totally make something on this. And so I'll run with those things. And I try to post stuff that is, again, not too difficult to reach and also not too easy. I want to hit that sweet middle spot where hopefully everybody who's encountering it is learning something. And I find that the most engaging posts of mine are things that are either points of friction between denominations, like things about Mary and the saints, or things that are maybe not spoken about too much, but are things that every Catholic should know and everybody should be aware of, like whose weddings you can go